While David's getting set up, would we like to go ahead, maybe, what can we do? Go ahead and do the oaths.
Yeah,
about
let's go ahead and get started if we can, because y'all know me. I like running meetings on time and efficiently and getting out of here to do the public's business without a lot of extraneous conversation. I'd like to welcome everyone. March 9th, 2022, 2 years ago, was our last in-person live meeting. So it is just joyful to me to be able to return and see your faces in a bigger screen than just that little 2x2 on my computer. So welcome. I also want to recognize new and returning board members. Returning board member Leslie Kessler, welcome back for another term. Yay, Leslie. Leslie is from Wilmington, New Hanover County. She actually drove up here this morning as a non-morning person. I find that admirable, Leslie. So thank you for that. And I also would like to introduce you to our two newest board members, PT assistants Megan Wentz and Stephanie Bernard. And would you two ladies just tell us, we'll start with you, where you're from and how you got here?
So I'm from the close to Wilmington area.
Hello. Can you hear us? Yeah.
I didn't want to make that drive.
Can you hear it on the Zoom?
Smart
Or do you
girl.
want me to keep my
But
phone
yeah,
on?
me and my husband and my son, we moved to North Carolina.
Okay.
about
All right,
2.5
great.
years
Thank
ago.
you.
So it's been 2.5 years, originally from Ohio.
Well, welcome. We're very happy to have you join us.
I'm Stephanie. I live in the Garner, Clayton, 4042 area. So coming here is not terrible, but it's not great. 40 is not great. I work home health now, but I was in outpatient for about 8 years in North Carolina. And I've been here my whole life, but I did do school in New Hampshire for 3 years. So I was in the aid and everything there. I've been in it a while. So like, all right, let's try something different. You never know.
That's right. That's great. Well, we're very happy to have you too. Please feel free to speak up and ask questions if there's something you don't understand. And then for the general room, there are restrooms out this door or that door, just down the hall, right outside this conference room. Public hearing at 10, we'll be going over board rule amendments. And then Kathy, do you want to address a thank you note from Cindy Kiley and then Massey?
Yes, so Cindy Kiley, for those of you who were not here at our December meeting, Cindy is a former staff member who worked for the board for almost 30 years. And so we gave her a Zoom party prior to her leaving at our last meeting. And she sent a thank you note that says, NCB, PTE, board members and staff, thank you so much for organizing my retirement party and giving me the opportunity to say goodbye to the board. You made me feel important and appreciated. The gifts were very much over the top. The memory book, Waterford Crystal wine, and Sienna gift certificate, lunch, flowers, and Pandora charm. I will cherish your kind words forever, for every year to come. I have truly been blessed to have had the opportunity to join the NCB PTE team. And so many years ago, that has been such a rewarding career. And I truly loved coming to work and each day to give my best. The friendship I have forged are priceless. I wish everyone the best. Keep up the good work for North Carolina. Looking forward to the new chapter and hopefully opening our Airbnb soon. Our door will always be open. So and then she leaves her contact information. And if anybody would like that, certainly come to me and get that. So that was from Cindy Kiley, our former staff. And then as far as Ben Massey goes, our former executive director, Ben now lives in Ashe County, North Carolina, and he has chosen to run for elected office in District 93 for the state house. And I'm just making that announcement, just that's what he's doing. And should anybody be interested in sending him a congratulatory note for taking the risk on running for office, feel free to do so. I can also give you his email address.
And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Director, Deborah Reagan, to give the oath of office to Megan Wentz and Stephanie Bernard. So if you two ladies would stand up.
You can have them do it at the same time, Debbie. You can have them do it at the same time.
Can you read that loud? Right?
Yes, yes.
You read it out loud.
Okay,
One, two, three.
I, Stephanie Bernard, do swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States. I, Megan Wentz, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government. Therefore, I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States. I want to solemnly swear that I will well and truly execute the duties of my office as a member of the North Carolina Board of Physical Therapy Examiners according to the best of my skill and ability, according to law, so help me God.
That's right. Welcome to the board.
And Megan and Stephanie have already been going through some orientation training directed by David Gadd and Kathy Arney. They have their swag, their computers, their laptop cases, their mugs to officially welcome them in. Before we move to calling the meeting to order, David Knoll, is everything good?
We're all set. I've got the live stream going.
David Gadd, can you hear?
I can hear everyone. Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you.
Okay. Kathy, should we try the telephone?
I think we should, until David can maybe see how he can get you connected. Can anybody hear David on their computer other than me?
No, because this could be all the volumes turned off.
Right. You're the only computer with your volume on. So David Gadd is our board attorney. He is unable to be with us in person due to an illness in his family, but he's upstairs in the conference room. So he's remoting in with us today. As our board attorney, he needs to be present at all formal board meetings.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to see if I can put you on speaker. And why don't you say hello? David, can you?
I can. Can you hear me?
Can you hear him now? Everybody? Okay, David, I'm gonna hang up for just a minute.
Okay.
How I could. I think that's what we need to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that may be what we do. He needs to be here.
Yeah. This is not gonna work.
Teresa, this is not, you're not gonna beat your Lansing record now.
I know it. I can't stand it.
Yeah,
No, you can't start that yet.
This is payback for me, especially when we started 9 instead of 8. You know?
No, thank you. I
No,
appreciate that.
we've been so efficient. I'm like, oh, sure, we do all these traffic at 5.
Sorry.
We'll be out.
I won't need that coming last cycle, I'll need it tonight.
Okay.
You want me to go get him?
Well, she's going to text them. I gave her my phone.
Can show him down here.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, then take those oaths up, copy them, and then bring them all back, please. Thanks. Okay. Well, we tried. Yes, ma'am, please. Okay, the chair's going to continue on, and we're going to ask David to come down. We can call the roll without him.
Okay. So, at long last, it is 9:35 a.m. on March the 9th. I'm going to call the roll. When I say your name, please say here. And then I'll call the meeting to order to make sure we have a quorum. So, Teresa Hale here, David Edwards, Stephanie Bernard, Megan Wentz, Dr. Paul Garcia, Jamie Minor, Leslie Kessler, Rosa Gonzalez. And those are all the voting board members. Also in the room is Executive Director Kathy Arney, Paula Brooks, David Knoll, and we have one public member present. Mary Kay Hanna is in the house.
And Debbie Reagan.
And Debbie Reagan, our Deputy Director. In the absence of the gavel, I'm using my candy dish to officially call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your patience as we navigate returning to our live meeting. One of the official duties that I have as your chair is to remind you of any conflict of interest that you may have. This is a requirement of all occupational licensing boards in the state of North Carolina that we read this conflict of interest statement. Please listen attentively and let me know if you have any conflict of interest. At the beginning of each meeting, the chair shall remind the members of their duty to avoid conflicts and appearances of conflict and inquire as to whether there is any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the board. Individual members must make a diligent effort before taking any action, including participation in discussions to determine whether a conflict or appearance of conflict exists. Individual members have an affirmative duty to inquire of their business associates, families, and close friends of any issues that may come before the board. If a member has a question regarding his or her particular situation, that member should ask direction from the chair, or in the event of the chair's unavailability, the vice chair. Having read the conflict of interest reminder and having reviewed the agenda prior to this meeting, does anyone need to declare any conflict of interest? Okay, thank you. This meeting has been publicly noticed, and notice of this meeting have been mailed and emailed to all the government officials and regulatory bodies that need to know about this meeting. I want to move along to our September.
The motion is for the December
Yeah.
minutes.
So you've all got in front of you a copy of the December North Carolina Board of PT Examiners Board Meeting, December 1. I will entertain a motion to accept or edit. Leslie Kessler has moved to accept the minutes as before you. Who was the second?
I'll second.
David Edwards seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes as before you from our December meeting, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Hearing none, the motion carries. We're going to move now to applications.
So we have some applications for the first time in quite a long time since we've moved to the AAP. The applications that we would bring before the board involve individuals that were trained outside of the United States. And for the benefit of our newer members, our rules call them foreign educated applicants, and they are applying either by exam or by endorsement. And so what makes this different than the CAPTE accredited applicant is that they have to submit a document that determines whether their educational background is substantially equivalent to what it was in the US at their time of graduation, their entry-level graduation. So the first application that we have, if you'll pull up those documents if you want to, you may have reviewed them already, and you may have some of your own notes, but Ms. Schroeder submitted her application and an educational credentials review from IERF. And the summary page here just lists more about what was on that educational credentials review. I would highlight that in general education, she has 0 semester credit hours, which basically means that she, according to the way that the coursework tool works, you have to have at least one course in communication, humanities, physical science, biological science, social behavioral science, and mathematics. And because she has 0, that would be considered a deficiency. In professional education, she does have 101 semester credit hours of professional education, which satisfies only 68 hours or semester hours of the credits that are required. So below are the list of items that are missing from the education. Because this person is applying by exam, they have to meet the substantial equivalence of the most recent coursework tool, which is coursework tool 6. And so in this particular review, it was found that general education, professional education, and number of credits are deficient. And so the recommendation of the executive director to the board would be that they be considered to be approved to take the exam once they meet all of the deficiencies that are noted. And we'll communicate with them after the board meeting to help them figure out how to accomplish that.
Are there any questions of the executive director about the recommendations that she is making for this candidate?
I don't have a question, but I noted on her application that she calls herself doctor, and she has a BS. She might misunderstand it.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you, Jamie, for pointing that out. I hadn't seen that.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the ED's recommendation for this candidate. All those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Kathy, the next one.
The next one is Simon Williams. And this gentleman is also foreign trained. He's a physical therapist applicant by endorsement, which means that he has had a license in another state in the US, which is one of the criteria by which he has to meet and to get a license in North Carolina. And in this case, he has to do the same things. He has to get an educational review, educational credentials review that's substantially equivalent to his year of graduation. And what I will say about this gentleman is that Debbie and I communicated with him multiple times. Because he has a significant number of years of experience in the United States, he would like the board to forego the requirements of him having to meet these educational deficiencies based on his number of years of experience. This is where, for the purpose of helping our new board members understand the decision-making that we have to go through, our board rules have requirements. The rules support our statute. And so we, as individuals, and even as a board, don't necessarily have the ability to go outside of those rules. And so the recommendation that I would have is that he has to meet the requirements of the educational credential in order to be eligible for licensure in North Carolina. So David, could I just ask you to comment on that? That's okay. That's okay. That's all right. So this is a foreign trained physical therapist by endorsement. So he has requested of us multiple times, of staff, that we waive all of his deficiencies in education because he has worked for a long time in the US and has had multiple licenses in the US. And what we've tried to tell him prior to getting to this board meeting is that you have these deficiencies. Here's how you can demonstrate that you have this knowledge base. And if you try to do it ahead, you don't have to go through the board process. And what I'm saying by coming to the board is the board has to comply with the rules related to foreign educated PTs by endorsement, and that my recommendation is that he has to meet the requirements.
I agree with you. The rules, this can be an issue. Say what they say about.
Yeah.
So he's worked here as a.
He has, just not in North Carolina. I'm sorry.
Oh, not, so this is just. purposely for North Carolina.
He is applying for licensure in North Carolina. He has worked, when you're reviewing these applications, you can go to, I think it looks like page 2, and it says professional licensure, and it shows all the places that he's had them and whether they're current or not. And he's got several current licenses in the US. That's right. And the other thing I will say is, we would have told him this already, but if he has a current license in a compact state, he could still come here.
That was my question.
But neither of these states are members of the compact. He also could come here on a temporary exemption right now, but I wouldn't necessarily, it's somebody's choice, but I wouldn't encourage that because it could be over tomorrow and then he's still back in the same spot where he was.
So none of the states that he's currently licensed in are part of the compact.
Hawaii and Florida, and they're not currently in the compact. So
If he renewed it in the other states, would he be eligible for the compact?
Texas, that's a good question, Leslie, because I don't think we thought that far with him.
Is that his home state?
That the other little technicality is that has to be his home state. With a compact privilege, you have to have a home state. So, I suppose he could be temporarily extending his stay in North Carolina, but you've got to have an address in that other state. But yes, because we've thought of that for other people too. And we just have to keep remembering that. But anyway, in this case, we couldn't figure out another way for him to achieve what he was looking for.
Just in this professional education requires medical science and clinical science in those categories. And in the amount of time that he's been in the United States, if he has done those clinical education, would they, he just would need to provide proof of that.
Correct. And that's what we tried to
And he
tell
hasn't
him.
done that.
Mm-mm.
So he may have already made the accomplishments, he just hasn't.
He may have.
He just hasn't demonstrated.
I don't believe that he has. That's right. And then he does have to CLEP one humanities. And so, you know, we like I said, we tried to provide all of that to him ahead, and I think he was just hoping that maybe his experience would allow him not to have to do that.
I think it's also interesting in this case particularly that all these other states went ahead and licensed him by endorsement without using any coursework tool measure. So is this what sets North Carolina apart, that we're doing this, or shouldn't every state be measuring him against the FSBPT coursework tool for his year?
Well, I won't say that other states don't use the coursework tool. I don't believe that that's true. It's just that different states have different requirements, and there's a clause where some boards can go outside of their rules to make an independent decision about the whether somebody has sufficient education or not. In this case, we're not doing that. I think, you know, I might as well pause and say it here, but we changed the rules a while ago because we believed, you know, as staff and advocated to the board that we were getting so many variable requests. And as staff, we're not PT educators. We don't have the ability to make those judgment calls about whether, you know, somebody's particular clinical experience meets a requirement or not. And so this is really more strongly felt with the TOEFL, but you know, we've had similar questions in the past. And if we are going to say that we can hold a consistent standard for people to be licensed in North Carolina, the coursework tool provides those standards. So that's where we are.
Are there any other questions for Kathy, Executive Director, about this particular case? Any further discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Motion's been made and seconded, made by Leslie, seconded by Dr. Paul Garcia, that we accept the ED's guidance on this applicant. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? And anyone abstaining from the vote? Hearing none, the vote carries unanimously. Kathy, the next foreign trained applicant.
This next individual, practice saying it, Kasharia, Mr. Kasharia, I believe. Wait a minute. Nope, Ms. Kasaria is also a foreign educated physical therapist by endorsement. So again, she's had a other license in the United States, but on coursework tool 5, she has not met the requirements, including being deficient in 1 chemistry with lab, which can be CLEPT. Don't have to take the whole semester long thing, but it can be CLEPT. And then the professional education, there are a few other things that are missing. So again, my recommendation is that they meet the deficiencies of general and professional education. And in this case, looks like they also need to meet some semester credit hours. 90. Yeah, so they also need to meet the semester credit hour requirement. So that's my recommendation to the board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Leslie Kessler and David Edwards that we accept the ED's recommendation on this applicant. Any further questions to the ED? Hearing none, we will take a vote. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? The motion carries. Kathy?
This next individual, oh, I skipped one, I'm sorry. We're going back to Gordon Ray. And this gentleman is a physical therapist assistant whose license lapsed, I believe in 2015, and would like to revive his license. And in the board rule, the requirements for reviving a license that has lapsed for longer than 5 years, you see the rule on the screen, is under letter C. They can either take and pass the PT exam again or complete 500 hours within the period of 1 year in the following manner: between 50 and 200 class hours or coursework, and then the rest, the balance in clinical work. So it also says in here that it needs to be approved by the board. And historically, I think the interpretation of that was that any individual who wants to do this needs to get it pre-approved before they do it. Well, in this scenario, this gentleman did not get it pre-approved or approved at all at any point, and he's almost completed all of it. In this case, he's chosen 50 hours of coursework, and the balance, which would be 450 hours of supervised clinical practice. I think when Debbie and I were looking at this, it just did not feel as robust as some of the other plans that people have put together for people who've been out of clinical practice for a while. But the flip side of that is the board rules don't specify exactly how many hours, and it doesn't specify exactly what the rigor of the courses have to be. So in this case, my recommendation, I didn't write one in particular in case the board wanted to have further discussion about it. So maybe we should do that first. If anybody has any questions about the rule and the plan of this individual.
It would be an interesting dilemma because many courses require that you're licensed before you take them. And so that may limit the accessibility to those applicable courses,
Yeah, that's true, Leslie. Thank you for saying that.
I mean, like I even did it when the electronic programs, like Cambridge or Summit, you have to be licensed to get a subscription.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because the ones he took were through through Summit. And so you wonder how they gained the access, but we maybe, I don't know. Anyway, when David and I have had this discussion, and I don't think that we can deny the fact that he didn't get it approved, but this is our opportunity to approve what he has chosen to do. I think we're still waiting on him to provide one jurisprudence exercise, which would be his 50. Okay, so he's done. And then does he have he's still working on his clinical hours? No, he's done with that too. Okay, so he had to, at one point he had to provide all of that to us. So I can make a recommendation that with a completed application that we approve his application for revival. Yes, ma'am.
Has he gotten all the hours he needs to stay or not?
He has. We've been sort of communicating with him since this summary was done. We've been back and forth. And I think yesterday or the day before was when we finally got that information.
Yes, he submitted it as if this is what he's already done and we're going to move forward. So we've had to coach him and go, but you need to have the clinical supervisor sign off on the clinical hours. You need to have his jurisprudence. You need to be sure that your your coursework.
And is there any coursework that we would have recommended? Thinking about the student, or is there anything on there that we would have made sure he had before?
Funny you should ask. After we finish with this application, I would like to talk about that. But at this point, I can't say that because that's not what the rule requires.
Okay.
Well, and it also goes back to, the rule doesn't say that we pre-approve his coursework. The rules say you got to do your 500 hours and it's got to be approved by the board. So if our intent is to guide someone into appropriate courses, then we're looking at a rule change, I think.
Right, technically, exactly.
Yeah. So the ED has a proposal on the floor. Is there any further discussion or question about this case? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion.
Hearing a motion that we accept the ED's recommendation on Gordon Ray PTA license revival from Jamie Minor, seconded by Rosa Gonzalez. Thank you. Ready for the vote? All those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? The motion carries.
And now we need to pause because it's 10 a.m. and we have a public rules hearing.
So we'll turn this over to Deputy Director Debbie Reagan. Public hearing on rule changes. Back on January the 18th, the North Carolina Registry contained the notice of proposed rulemaking proceedings, scheduling the hearing for today and the subject matter to be addressed at that hearing, namely to amend the following rules. 21, NCAC 48B.0102, 48F.0101, 48G, 0105, 00203, 00504, and to appeal the following rules cited as 21 NCAC 48E.0104, 48F.0103. The reasons for the proposed action were stated in that notice of hearing, which also included the rules themselves and the notice of the public hearing being held today. And I would note for the record that the time is now 10:02 a.m. Comment procedures indicated that any comments could be submitted in writing to Debbie Reagan, the Deputy Director of the Board, up until yesterday, March 9th. And I would ask now that Ms. Reagan, if any written comments regarding the rules have been received thus far.
We received one comment. It was before the comment period opened. I did think it was an interesting comment, and it said that 48F.0101A3 says in the workplace I should use my name on my license or certificate. I get that, but all of my professional career, including the work I now do at Alliance Medical Ministry, I've been known as Skip. Few people in the world even know I'm actually Wadsworth. If this rule is passed, I'll comply as I can, but no one either personally or professionally knows me as Wadsworth, just one thought. But this was before the public comment period, but it did address, it was a public comment.
Thank you, Debbie.
There to the public comment, we talked to David Gadd about that. And I think what the intent is that we are a profession that is made up of a majority of female licensees. And there is a lot of name changing that occurs with people. You know, some people don't change their name, some people take on a new name, some people then change it back. And so when the public is coming into a clinic, they have a right to know who's treating them. And if they have a complaint to file, if they don't know the person's name, it's hard to file a complaint. I think our intention here is that there's a consistency between what a patient is told and what's on the license. I think we also understand that Debbie and I both have our maiden names on our current wall certificates that are sitting in our office. So the point that Skip, Mr. Wadsworth, Roy brought up to us, you know, I mean, it's true, but I think the intent has to do with public protection as opposed to maybe something that's a little bit more practical. And one possibility is to add a line on the wall certificate for a nickname. But that we didn't consider that until after we proposed this rule.
It also doesn't address the maiden name being changed from the license to a married name.
Is it for?
It's not part of his name. That's just a nickname.
Yeah, it's right.
Or even, you know, David, do you mind if I just mention your scenario? I mean, he uses his first initial, but we all call him David, but his first initial is C for another name. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing, Madam Chair, that I've noticed recently, Medicaid in particular, they now check your social security card and number against your driver's license, against your license name, and also against the NPI registry. So if it doesn't match exactly, it doesn't go through. And so there are some safety nets there, but we have been really careful about that. We sent in credentialing to make sure they've already changed everything.
Yeah, so we're trying to help with the public regulation of this. You know, you have a license, and so, you know, you have a level of obligation to the public to allow them to know who you are. And by putting your correct name on your full correct name on the certificate that is often posted in clinics these days, enables the public to know who you are.
Do we need to add anything like a legal name to match the, you know, the government issued social security number that the
Your
certificate
clinical
should match?
documentation,
Huh?
your clinical documentation would have your legal name on it, right? So the issue is what's posted. Certificate.
So when this was initiated, this was because we get frequent questions about what people are asking to call themselves clinically versus what's on their wall certificate. Or in their, well, and their probably their name tag may be a little different, but you know, that's where you could put Kathleen Arney and underneath it, but I'd put Kathy, because that's what I go by. Or I'd still have this and I just tell everybody, because you're also supposed to introduce yourself when you meet people. You know, some of this, it seems silly that we're having the discussion, yet at the same time, our job is public protection. And having consistent names is the way that we are able to find people. We have had more than one challenge in the investigative committee seeking individuals. And this is part of the issue, is the name that you go by.
And we'll say in our clinic, one, for example, Dr. Adam Gabriel, he goes by Gabe. That's what everybody knows him by. So when I listen to him, a patient comes in, he says, I'm Dr. Adam Gabriel, but I go by Gabe. So he's clarifying.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And it's likely, from an investigative committee perspective, that if a member of the public had a complaint against a licensee, and they said, I received my treatment at ABC Physical Therapy by Johnny Boy or Gabe or Skip, then we could track down what clinic that was, who were you employing at that time. And I mean, there are ways around this that we can, find out who this person is.
Well, so just to wrap it up, is the Rules Review Commission requires us to have written comments. So this was submitted ahead of time. There was one other comment that was sort of kind of not a comment. Like Debbie was saying, this was submitted before the public rules or public comment period, but they require us to do that. And so when we now go back for them to approve it, they get to see the public comments. And if they ask us, the board needs to have discussed it and decided whether, we should adjust it or whether we're still supporting, what we had originally put forward. So I think it's important that we just at least have a consensus or discuss what things we might want to do to alter it, should there be questions that come up at the Rules Review Commission when this goes for their vote.
Like you said, that they can language is easier.
Later on in life, I'm just looking at the license, they should use the name that's on the license certificate in the workplace. It doesn't say how frequently you have to use that name, so if you've done an introduction, have you used that name? I mean,
So the rule is generally broad enough to allow for the use of a nickname and the use of adding a marriage name or, after divorce, a maiden name or whatever.
David Gadd, do you have anything else you want to add?
I like the idea of the licensee verify what the name is. So the one consultation, you say, like what they did with the effective, I think it's too burdensome for us to try to account for every potential situation may arise. Putting it on licensing to clarify. Yeah, I concur. Yeah, I think that's
and then generally, any complaint at some point would review, include a documentation review, right? Or somehow a record of that interaction will be reviewed, and at that point, you should have the licensee's name, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Regardless of what they were called.
yeah, I think the people that we've had difficulty finding didn't want to be found. So,
And that'll be only one name, one extra name. For instance, I made a name, and then I married with Gonzalez, and then I married with Smith, and then I married with Schubert. I don't know.
But did you keep all those names?
Huh?
Did you keep all of those names?
Maria
Rosa.
I was Schubert for a while, so I wanted my patients to know the Contreras and Gonzalez, Smith.
Well, so then what David's saying is that that's up to you to introduce yourself by your now name and then what you'd like to be called.
So I think, with the renewal certificates, should have your most up-to-date name, and that's going to be on the original certificate, hopefully. And in addition, burden of proof falls on the clinician, because most of the EMRs are going to have the legal names, so the process is through NPI and the insurance
Right.
companies.
Right.
So just to clarify myself, for instance, I will have probably my name that I get my license with. I was married with Schubert when I got my license.
And then when I change my name, it'll be that other name underneath, so my maiden name. What do you think?
It allows for you to change you can request a new certificate with a change in.
I think we should just pass rules and everybody sticks to the name they're forming.
One of the staff members would agree with you right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for this robust discussion. I think that David Gadd, our attorney, had the right answer when he said the burden of proof is on the licensee to notify the board of their name. I am required to read specific language into the record, since this is a public hearing, that the North Carolina Board of Physical Therapy Examiners proposes to amend rules 21 NCAC 48B, 48F, and 48G, and to repeal 48E and 48F. The changes to the aforementioned rules are being requested to make the rules consistent with current practice and policy by the NC Board of PT Examiners. The proposed effective date for these rules is August 1 of this year, 2022. It is always appropriate at a hearing of this nature to hear from any citizens who have attended the meeting. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak? If so, please state your name and address. Hearing none, do any members of the board have any additional comments they would like to make on these rules? If not, then I think it appropriate for the board to close the public hearing aspect of this and to discuss what they would want to do with regard to the implementation of these proposed rules. Do any members of the board have any further comment? Hearing none, I would note that for the record, that the public hearing portion is now closed at 10:15 a.m. Thank you to Debbie Reagan, our rules czar, for preparing this information and for having good clarifications.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we
Right.
interrupted our review of applications to stay timely with our public meeting. So at this moment, I will turn it back over to Kathy to resume application review.
Do I need it? Okay. Okay. This is another foreign educated PT applicant by endorsement, Mr. Panchasera, and he has an educational credentials review that shows that he has some deficiencies in general education and professional education. He meets the requirement, so it's really his general education. Again, just a note for some of our newer members that sometimes, depending on where people do their either undergraduate or prerequisite training, they don't do gen ed the same way that we do here in the US. And so that's how folks who've been licensed and practice elsewhere in the US end up with these deficiencies. So in the case of coursework tool 4, what you might notice is that under number 4, 1-4 up top there, under physical sciences, it says 2 courses in chemistry with lab he's deficient in. Well, in the coursework tool, back in coursework tool 4, they required 2 chemistries and 2 physics. In subsequent coursework tools, they changed it so that there was 1 chemistry with lab and 1 physics with lab. This board in 2013 made a decision that from that day forward, they were only going to require 1 chemistry with lab, 1 physics with lab, regardless of which coursework tool was used. So based on board policy, down at the bottom, under my recommendation, you can see that I've only written one chemistry with lab as opposed to two chemistry with lab. All of these, with the exception of physics, have the ability to be lab. Physics, when I've talked to the assistant director at FCCPT, apparently you can complete a physics with lab online now. And so, it's a little less burdensome than finding, college transferable credit, at some institution to be able to do this, take a whole semester. So my recommendation is that they complete their general education requirements and then they be eligible for licensure by endorsement with a completed application. Yes. That's a good question. Let's look. Yeah. Yeah, because that's the second one. So if we were going with the one course required in physics and one course required in chemistry, it looks like you've met it. Yeah, that's a good catch. So looks like this individual has already met the one course in physics that's been required. So I will amend my recommendation to remove the one course in physics lab. So it's just the chemistry and mathematics. Both of those can be completed by CLEP.
Kathy, would you please explain CLEP for those who may have forgotten or are not educated about that?
College level exam preparation. So you can take them by taking a test as opposed to having to take a course. And if you meet it at their minimum level, then that is sufficient for meeting the requirement of the coursework tool. Thank you. I meant to do that early.
I'll entertain a motion. Motion's been made by Leslie, seconded by David Edwards to accept the ED's recommendation with the editorial change as you've just heard. All those in favor, please let me know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries.
While we're on the coursework or the applications, may I just add one other thing? I put it in another part of the meeting, but we're related to applications right now. To the point that Jamie made earlier, as far as revivals go, there's new research that's out by the Federation on revivals and how long people are out of school. They call it re-entry to practice. That's another term that's used. So when people re-enter practice, some of it depends on how long they've been out of practice. And looking at both PT and PTA separately, because the scopes of practice are different, it looks at which skills deteriorate most quickly. So depending on how long you've been out, these may be the skills that you need to be refreshing on when you do an application. And I would like to suggest to the board that the staff come back with a recommendation at the next meeting about what we might suggest to individuals who are reviving their license by 500 hours as an appropriate plan. I think we should just see whether anybody
Does anybody have a question about that?
Yeah.
Because again, this could involve a rule change, involve just giving the staff the authority and the intuitive discussions with licensees about revivals and what is necessary. And using the best data and research we have for what clinical skills deteriorate when you've been out of practice.
All right, we'll bring that back to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. It is now time for us to go into closed session. Is there any request to reorder agenda items, to take a short break? I'll entertain any of that at the moment.
I propose we close the council.
And if you need a break, feel free to get up.
So we will need a motion, correct, David Gadd, to go in this public part of the meeting and go into closed session.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to the statute referenced by David Gadd.
You have a second?
Thank you. Motion's been made by David Edwards and seconded by Leslie Kessler. That we close the public part of this meeting and go into closed session. At this time, I would ask all non-voting members of the board to exit the room. And we will notify you when it's time to return.
Okay, we lost our agenda driver. So does everybody have their click up just if you need it? Okay. All right, so. Up, David.
How are you doing?
Oh, good gracious. Oh, that's the only